Hi guys. So this is chapter 4 case study. So now that we have learned the basic techniques of building a web app, interactive web app using Shiny, we're going to talk about the approach building a web app. All right. So the big idea is the first step is explore data. So this is where you import the data, you understand the data, you go through each of the columns, right? And column names, the definition, description, and understand each variable, and you know what information your data contains, right? And you look at the data table itself and um, start with row number one, the first observation, and read through the information about that the first observation and try to make a story of that observation, right? So if it's say rental property data set of San Francisco, right? And you have each row represents rental property, and the columns are characteristics of each of those rental properties, right? You would have uh, number of bedrooms, number of bathrooms, its square footage, and neighborhood, and so on, right? And you look at the first um, observation and go through each column and say, oh, this rental property has three bedrooms along with three bathrooms, and it is 2,000 square footage in the city of San Francisco, right? You're going to visualize that information in your head, right? So that's how I recommend that you um, understand the data, right? That's the first thing you need to do after importing the data set, right? Before you even start coding to find the patterns and trends and so on, right? And then after that, you have a better understanding of your data, and then you start coding, right? Finding trends and patterns. So you would have the code, right? So this code is important because you're going to use this again when you start developing your Shiny app. Okay. So by the end of this step, you would have a good understanding of your data, and also you would have the R code to express or visualize those trends and patterns, right? The next step is develop prototype. So this is where you start building a Shiny app, but here you're going to start very, very simple, very, very simple. That is the important part, as simple as possible, right? And then once you have the prototype, then you try to polish, right? So you once you have a prototype that works, functioning prototype, you want to polish it, right? So in the case study in chapter 4, the data that we're using is injury data, sample from a sample of hospitals in the United States, and we're going to focus on injuries by toilet and in the year of 2017. Right? So the first pattern that we found is the number of injuries starts increasing, as people age. But then after around the age of 80, the count of injuries start declining, right? That seems a little odd because you would think that people who are 80 years old or older more prone to injuries, right? So what we do uh, after this, right, is okay. So let's take into account um, the number of people in each age group, right? So once we take into account population in each age group, right, we have a different story. So the rate of injuries starts rising after age 50, and we no longer see the decline after the age of 80. Okay. So the reason that um, the count of injuries starts declining after the age of 80 is just because we don't have as many people, right? So the count is declining, not necessarily because older people are more careful, less prone to injuries. It's just that we don't have as many people. Okay. So that's the findings of the data and now we want to, right? We want to develop an app that allows the user to visualize this injury data, right? The patterns and trends in injury data on their own, right? So here, again, you want to start the prototype as simple as possible. So when you do this, it's important that you sketch the UI, right, on a paper with a pencil, and then so you would have this UI, sketch the UI, and also the reactive graph, right, that explains the flow of inputs and from inputs to outputs, right? So in this particular case study, right, we're going to have one row for one input, one row for three tables, and one row for one plot. So we would have input function that collects users' input, right? So that collects inputs from the user, right? That's one row at the top, and in the middle, another row for tables, and at the bottom, we would have a plot, all right? And the server side, we need to have the code, right? So this is the back end, UI is the front end, right? Again, as I said before, we're gonna take the code from EDA step, right? Data exploration step, and then simplify it using reactive expressions, right? And then again, we're gonna polish the app, right? So in this particular case study, um, we're going to standardize tables, right? So, you know, in the prototype, we have table with different length. Some tables have more rows than others. So we're going to reduce it to five, uh, top five rows, all three of them, right? And also, we're going to make the table width equal, all three tables equal width, right? And then um, in the prototype, we have the plot that shows the rate of injuries, but we want to give the user the option to switch back and forth between the rate of injuries and the count of injuries, right? So we're adding a functionality to the plot. And lastly, we want to add narratives to the app, right? Um, so that is the big picture for this chapter 4 case study. And let's dive in. I'll see you in the next video.